Good morning. It's the last Saturday in April, and this is a little garden tour to see what's happening in the spring blooms. These are not native plants. Most of the garden is, but these are my herbs that I'm going to be growing and harvesting over the course of the summer. Up in this top tier, we have a lot of thyme and some chives. And then over here, cilantro and scallions. Scallions, I never buy plants of. I just get them from the grocery store, cut the little roots end off, and plant them, and they grow. This is called Rumex, I think. I've never grown it before, but it's supposed to be good on like sandwiches and salads and stuff. And then we've got some different oreganos and some different sages. And eventually I'll get some rosemary in here as well. But those should be yummy. Hi, Hera. All right, there are a lot of garden beds all around everywhere, but this one along the side of the house doesn't look like much right now. These are lilies, orange ditch lilies, most people call them. They are actually invasive, so I'm I'm conflicted about them because these came from my mom's house, and they just a lot of strong nostalgia about them. They'll grow with really tall stalks with orange lily flowers on the end, which look really pretty, but they are like impossible to kill. So they tend to show up in places that people don't want them. Growing along here this is a type of goldenrod that won't bloom until later in the summer. I have a lot of brown-eyed Susans happening over here. So a type of Rudbeckia or coneflower. A little more lily there. All of these are brown-eyed Susans. They spread by seed, clearly. These are the dead Monarda from last year, bee balm that is really popular with the pollinators once it gets going. Over here, there are a couple more lilies, some Asiatic lilies, a bunch of some little hyacinths that were finished blooming from a couple of weeks ago, and some irises that are getting going here. These two stalks here are going to be really tall. I think these are Japanese wood lilies, maybe. The stalks get like 5-6 feet tall with those big bell-shaped white lily flowers on the end. So those I tend to have to stake up a little bit. More irises here on this little corner. All the irises came with the house, so I just never bothered to take them out. But that's this garden. Not a whole lot to look at right now besides some dandelions that are growing and some violets. I believe these are Viola sororia, maybe. Common blue violet, if I have that name right. And they are everywhere. People tend to consider them a lawn weed, but like, look how cute they are. Little heart-shaped leaves, these purple flowers. They make a great green mulch ground cover to keep soil moisture in. So I let them stay wherever they show up. This is going to be, actually, I forgot this was here. This is a columbine, a native eastern red columbine that last year all of my plants got munched to the ground by the caterpillars that were using it, which is kind of the point of native plants. You want to grow the caterpillars that birds can use to feed their babies, because only adult birds eat seed, but the babies need insects, so you got to plant the plants that the insects can use to keep that food chain going. These should be, you're starting to see the shape of this one here, but that'll get much bigger and a more impressive looking bloom in the next couple of weeks probably. So that's this side. Here's the dog. Isn't she cute? Yes. All right, over here, there's This is some Solomon seal. You can see that little dangling flowers are just starting to come out there. I bought this thinking it was a native plant, and then realized, which is often the issue, that people use common names like Solomon seal to apply to a lot of different things that are actually different species. And I don't have the species name of this one memorized, but this is actually a European version with these multicolored, these variegated leaves. So it was disappointing to learn that, but I let it stay because at least it's growing in this spot where not many other things tend to grow. Here's a big container this is a giant lavender. I think the cultivar name is Phenomenal. It's gotten huge, and I think it's all bending this way off to the left because it's constantly being blown by the compressor for the HVAC, but you know. And then also in this container, there's a couple other things hiding. There's this little, I don't think it's out yet. There's a heuchera that's in here. And then this vine growing on this trellis, which is just starting to get some leaves, is an American wisteria, not a Japanese wisteria. That's invasive here. Very pretty, but causes a lot of problems. But this one is native, at least it's native a little further south from here. Not all the way up in Pennsylvania, but it gets very similar, those clusters of purple dangling flowers. So eventually I want to get this out of the container and into the ground so it can really do its thing, but so far so good. Here along the side, I eventually want to plant some things here. I sort of put some wood chips down last season but didn't do anything with them, so nothing's here yet. We'll come back up around that side. Let's come down around here first. Over here behind the deck is this bed that was here with the house when I bought it. A number of things that I don't even know. This bed is really good at collecting leaves, and I think it just suffocates out a lot of the stuff that grows here because I don't tend to do garden cleanup like most people. This is I believe this is pink muley grass, which hasn't bloomed for me yet, but maybe it will this year, who knows. There's some heather, which is not native. You can see a little pink flower back there. This is an azalea, which is also not a native variety, but it's just sort of surviving here until it gets choked out by everything else. All these big dead stalks are another type of coneflower. This is cutleaf coneflower or green-headed coneflower that the bees absolutely love, but it tends to spread and go everywhere. So I planted like one of these 2 years ago, and there's so many. And over here, what do we have? We've got, this is some threadleaf coreopsis that blooms a nice yellow color. This one doesn't get too tall. I think this is the cultivar Zagreb. So it only tops out at about like 12 to 18 inches, as opposed to the straight native species that gets like 2 feet tall. And then back over here in the back corner, this is a bed I created just a couple of years ago. This tree here is an eastern redbud. It's just about finished blooming, but it has these tiny pinkish purple flowers that almost look magenta when it's in full bloom. And it's really interesting. This species does what's called, I believe it's pronounced cauliflower, sort of like cauliflower, where the blooms come straight off the wood. They're not at like the very tips of the branches or anything. They're just all down the actual branches of the tree. So it's an interesting effect. Not a lot of tree species do that, but this is going to get little heart-shaped leaves are coming out and will look very pretty this summer. Here I've got my last year's dead stalks of a different type of goldenrod. So we'll see those blooming later in the summer. Over here I've got a bunch of different types of phlox, tall garden phlox. which will, I think there's a couple of different colors in here. They'll get to be about 2 to 3 feet tall, and bloom later in the summer as well. We've got, I think this is an aster, which also gets kind of tall, but has these tiny daisy-like white flowers, which is very pretty. This struggle bush is still trying to do something down here. But this is a winterberry, I believe most people call it. This one is female, is having a hard time, and this one is a male. And you have to have both a male and female plant in order to produce the berries from pollinating the flowers that'll come out later. The male flowers are very small. The female flowers are a little bit bigger, but the females will bear the big red berries that featured heavily in M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. Out in the woods, in a lot of that footage, there were these bright red berry bushes, and that's what these were. So I'm sort of hopeful that this girl will recover, but we'll see. Down in here I've got some ground cover growing. This is green and gold, or golden knee, and it tends to grow and spread across the ground with these stolons that go out and pop up new growth. So I only started with maybe 2 or 3 plants over here, and they're finally starting to go, which is exciting. I want them to take over as much as they can. They'll get some nice cute little yellow blooms in a little bit. And then here I have lyre leaf sage, named so because supposedly the leaves are the shape of a lyre. I don't know if I see it, but it's another good plant that'll grow and spread as ground cover, and they get flower stalks that should be coming up shortly with these little bell-shaped purple flowers on them. It handles mowing really well, so a lot of people use it for like walkable garden paths, or as part of a native like replacement lawn for turf grass. So more little islets hanging out over here. All right, up this bed there isn't a whole lot. There's a lot of weeds right now, but this eventually, I want this whole little stretch here along the neighbor's fence to be an entire hedge of Baptisia. It's a blue false indigo is the common name. One of them is coming up here right now. This one, I forget if this one blooms purple or yellow, but I have just a couple of these planted along here right now, and then I have seed pods collected from one of my others in the front garden that I want to get sown and grow some more in here, because I saw a photo online in one of the garden groups I follow, of somebody that had an entire hedge of these plants, and it was gorgeous. So aspirational. This is a quote-unquote weed, or what we call volunteer sometimes, that just showed up. This is spring avens, which is also a little native plant. It'll get some little white blooms showing up soon, but it just sort of showed up here. And a lot of times things show up and I let them stay, unless they're invasive, like Asian mock strawberry, which is awful. There's a native strawberry that I don't have any of, so eventually I plan to get some. Here's the other blue false indigo. This one is working up its way pretty well. This one is lemon meringue, so this will bloom yellow, and it gets, you can sort of see on the photo there, it gets really bushy, but it is a soft perennial. It's not a woody plant, but it does look an awful lot like a shrub once it gets really big later in the summer. There was a third one planted here. I don't see it coming back. That's sad. We had a harsh winter, so a lot of things didn't quite make it. Over here, this bed is an experiment. So first of all, you can see this stone wall here. giant tree in it. But this is a retaining wall along the front of the property. It's about a good 3 to 4 feet high. And the thing about retaining walls is that the ground that's behind them is horribly dry. It's just so much further up from the water table. So it can be a struggle to get plants to grow in here because it's so dry. Made worse actually by the fact that this red maple, who is lovely, needs a little bit of trimming for some dead branches. But maples are notorious moisture suckers. So this bed started dry. It's made even more dry by the fact that this maple is here, just drawing every bit of moisture out of the soil. But starting back over here on this end, got this is some of that creeping phlox or moss phlox, not to be confused with the tall garden phlox that was in the back bed over there. This is a spring bloomer, again a quote-unquote native species. I have never seen the actual straight native species of this plant on the market. They're all cultivars. I don't know what they've been bred with in order to get all these different flower colors that they come in. So I'm sort of dubiously, I don't know exactly how beneficial they are to the native wildlife. Because a lot of times when you start to hybridize things, it loses palatability to insects, or changes in flower color or shape can confuse pollinators, and just the native fauna does not use it the way that they would the native species, so it gets a little less valuable over time. I don't know if that's true of these guys, but they're very pretty, and they're a reliable spring bloomer that sort of spreads into these mats, which looks really nice. So I'm a big fan. These are two, I don't know what these are. I think there's like maybe that's a blue fescue, and then a liriope, not native, bought a long time ago before I knew anything about plants. We're also growing some goldenrod here, which is an experiment to see if this species will tolerate the shade from the surrounding trees as well as the relative dryness of this soil. Most goldenrod likes to be in a very bright sunny location, but this one supposedly does well in shade. Here we've got a collection of heuchera, also known as coral bells. The straight species of these is native here and is really lovely, but it's actually really difficult to find the straight native species. But these hybrids are on the market everywhere. I think we've got some, this is called Southern Comfort, that gets this coppery reddish color. This one, I don't know if this is Palace Purple, maybe. The name is not there, that's okay. But there's a bunch of different, they come in so many different colors, and I have them all here right now, but my plan is to eventually like get as many different colors as I can and then make like a little rainbow kind of patch. Would look very cute, I think. Over here I did try to plant a redbud tree like 2 or 3 seasons ago. It didn't work out. Just sort of kept dying off, and I kept cutting off the dead parts, and I think it's time to call it. It's not coming back. So I'll need to dig that out maybe. Let's see, we've got, this is a penstemon, a hairy beard tongue, or beard tongue foxglove as a lot of people call them. This is also a species that supposedly does a bit better in drier and slightly shadier, or at least will tolerate drier, shadier conditions. So this is this guy's second year, and hoping he'll get a little bit bigger this time and see if he'll spread at all. A couple other experimental things in here. All of these grape hyacinths just showed up. They're not native, but they bloom up in the springtime, and at least they make it look like this bed is doing something. And in a bit, they will all die back and just be all this these dead leaves that I'll just leave here to feed the soil. We also have this guy's on his way out. But a couple of things in here. I have some ferns. These are called Christmas ferns. They also do well in dry shade, and I'm trying to get a couple to establish along the edge of the wall here. Got a couple hostas that are not doing great here. They were planted many, many years ago, also not native, but they were put here because they were supposed to do well in shade. Did not realize at the time just how dry the shade was here. This one keeps popping back a little bit more strongly than the others, but I think they're probably doomed if they just stay here forever. All right, this plant is the same as all of those plants. This is a whitewood aster, and they are the only thing that will grow really well in this bed. They love dry shade, and that's exactly what we've got. I'm being barked at by the dog across the street. He's really angry that I'm here, but that's okay. So these whitewood asters will send up some flower stalks, and around like September, October, they have also small white daisy-like flowers, and they will be all in bloom around this tree. What do we have here? This is another different type of phlox. This is Phlox stolonifera, where it spreads via stolons, similar to that green and gold in the back bed. This is the only one that seems like it's really done pretty well. I bought a bunch of these 2 or 3 seasons ago and tried to really establish them in this area, and they didn't do so great. But this one might be okay. So we'll see how it does. We also have, here's another columbine baby that's popping up here. This is probably from some of the seeds I spread over here last fall, trying to see if they would grow. There's another little baby one. So optimistic for those. More asters, whitewood asters here. These are another type of violet. I actually don't know exactly what kind these are, if these are different than the purple ones or not. Purple flowers have genetics that makes it really easy for there to be variation that goes white instead of purple. So this could very well be the exact same species as the purple ones, like these. But these were from my late grandmother's garden. I had pulled and collected a number of them, I think early last year, maybe, and placed them in a couple spots around the garden. So that's my paternal grandmother's garden plants, and then I have this little concrete bunny that is from my maternal grandmother's garden. So both of them are sort of hanging out here. Eventually I'll bring out a fern plant I have inside, a house plant that'll live here over the course of the summer, next to this increasingly sad owl statue that was at my brother's house when he bought it, and he didn't want it, so I took it, and it's in sad shape. But I thought he was so cute. I also have a little bird bath here, also in questionable shape, that will get filled up as the weather warms for birds. There are rocks in it so that bees and things can land in here and have a way to get out. So this is a sedum, not native, also came with the house. It's been in this planter for God knows how long. This planter was out around the back corner of the house, just sitting on a concrete pad, and I literally never touched it for a decade. Nothing. Never paid attention to it, never watered it, just left it. And it kept doing its thing. So I brought it out here out front to see if it would continue to do its thing, and it seems like it is. So it's also just hanging out because it earned its right to be here. Oh, here, I'm not going to touch this guy because I don't know if I'm one of the people that reacts to it like poison ivy. Poison ivy, by the way, is also a North American native. I do not grow it in the garden. Most people don't. But this is called Virginia creeper, and it does have, some people do get a skin reaction from it, usually not very severe, but some folks do, not everybody. And it is a little vine that will gladly grow its way up a tree or a structure, and it does so in a non-destructive manner, unlike English ivy, where it sends all these little grabbers like into your stone masonry and stuff. If English ivy is climbing your house, it's causing a problem, but this guy would not do that. But it does tend to get it's an aggressive grower, so a lot of folks tend to get rid of it or keep it at bay, or cut it back really aggressively at the end of the season, because it will just go if you let it. So I have this one little guy here that just showed up on me last year. Haven't decided if I'm gonna keep him here, move him. Maybe I'll put it back by one of the other trees at the back of the house and let it go. We'll see. But also in here, they're not showing up a whole lot yet, but these are a native sedum. This is Sedum ternatum, or woodland stonecrop, and this whole little section here will be full of this. You can see the little shoots starting to come up, but a cute little succulent plant that has done better than I expected in the dry shade under this tree. They do like shade, but they tend to like a little bit more moisture, but being succulent as they are, they're doing okay. There's this little flag. I sort of fell off of being able to put a little plant marker like this out for every single thing that I have. But I do have a bunch of blank ones and on the porch, and I just need to label them and do it. Also in the front corner of this bed, I have, this is wild ginger, Asarum canadense, and it's got these really cool round leaves. It doesn't get much taller than this. They get a little bit taller, a little bit bigger leaves, and then they have tiny little, they're not here yet, but they get these tiny little maroon flowers that bloom way down at the base of the stalk, so you have to sort of lift and look in order to see them when they're there. But this is also supposed to be a good shady ground cover. I think up here at the very front corner of the wall, it's very dry, so it's not spreading as much as it might otherwise, but the whitewood aster is perfectly happy to do that. I started with 3 plants here like 3 years ago. It's everywhere. So. Hi, Hera. All right, in the front we have another retaining wall which has some of my favorite plants in it. These yellow blooming ones are wood poppies, or celandine poppies, not to be confused with greater or lesser celandine, which are highly invasive and horrible. These are native, at least dubiously native within Pennsylvania, but definitely in like Ohio and surrounding areas. One of these showed up for me probably like 5 some years ago. Just appeared in the garden, and it was so pretty. I was like, I wonder what this is, and so I looked it up, and that was how I started figuring out, like, oh, native plants versus non-native plants. So I just have a very special place in my heart for these guys. I think they're so cute. Typically these are spring bloomers, and they will often be done by like late May, but I have had some of these, depending on what kind of spring and summer we have, I've had some of these keep re-blooming into October, which is wild. So I let them just hang out and spread as much as they want. They get these, once the flowers are done, they will grow these these seed pods from the spent flowers. These will get like bigger, poofier looking, like little capsules. And the capsules will be full of seeds that will then explode later when touched or disturbed, and that's how they spread their seed. Mixed among them, all these reddish purpley looking guys, is a fringed loosestrife, which also spreads pretty aggressively. But it gets to be a good 3 feet tall. It has little yellow flowers that'll show up mid to late summer maybe. So you can see all of it in here. It likes this spot a lot. I try to keep it at bay a little bit. Here around the mailbox, I'm still figuring out what's happening here. I spread a whole lot of different seed heads from around the garden in here, like maybe the fall before last, and just sort of I'm just letting it go and seeing what takes, seeing what likes to be happy here. A lot of what likes to be happy here is fleabane. This is Philadelphia fleabane, which is I think also related to asters, so similar white daisy-like flowers, but these will get big tall stalks that will grow up and have a lot of tiny flowers on them that pollinators also love. Looks like there's some goldenrod is coming up in here. This is a weed. All this chickweed is the bane of my existence as well. Ugh. But we have some violets in here, some little white ones from my grandmother. I let the dandelions stay for the most part. They're just sending their taproot down into the soil and breaking up some of the compaction that has resulted from most of these beds being pretty heavily neglected for many, many, many years. So I'm just letting them sort of rebuild the soil health a little bit. Here at the base of the lamppost are some non-native mums, chrysanthemums that tend to bloom around September, October. Very popular fall plant that smells really nice. We also have some spent hyacinths here. So whenever I get one for decorative purposes, I tend to plant it here just to see who will come back, and just let them have at it. All right, so then we're along the front of the house. There are so many garden beds here, y'all. Here along the front have more of the columbine. The first columbine showed up around this spot around the same time as the yellow wood poppies did. And I was like, ooh, what's that? Oh, that's interesting. We're gonna keep that. So we'll see how many of them show up here this year from all of the reseeding from the last couple of years. They tend to just pop up everywhere, and they have these cute little leaves. We also have, let's see, it looks like some goldenrod and asters are working their way in here. And there's a little white violet back there. This guy is sad. There are 3 of these shrubs here, here, and there, who is also very sad. This one's doing the best. This is mountain laurel, which is actually a Pennsylvania state flower or shrub, and they will bloom with these gorgeous little pink cupped flowers. Probably in the next month, they'll start to really be in full bloom. And this is a cultivar called Elf, which stays very small and compact like this. The native ones of these get to be like 10 feet tall if you let them go. So I'm giving them a go here and see if this one in the center seemed to be happy. I don't know if these ones on the ends are gonna make it. They're really not in good shape. What else do we have here? This is foam flower, Tiarella cordifolia. It's in full bloom right now, early spring bloomer, with these little soft feathery white flower stalks. And it also grows with stolons along the ground and spreads to become a ground cover. This started out as one plant many years ago, and back when I had no idea what I was doing, and I was very fortunate that I picked a good spot to put it because it likes it here. And I actually want to try to take some of it and put it over there under the tree and see if it'll take. With native plants, it's all about trying to find the right plant for the right place and working out, what are the right conditions that are conducive for things to grow, rather than trying to force it in ways that aren't really going to work or be sustainable. This is actually a native grass. This is Carex pennsylvania, or Pennsylvanica, I think is the name. I've got all of this mock strawberry in here that just goes everywhere. This is another columbine. I think this is a non-native variety though. I didn't know when I bought it because it wasn't in bloom, but a lot of times the native ones get crossed with Asian varieties, which have really pretty colors, but then lose all their wildlife value. The native ones are loved by hummingbirds. The non-native ones, no insects or birds care about them. And the problem is, if I let this one stay, it'll cross-pollinate with the native ones and turn them all into hybrids. So I might have to take this one out sooner than later and make sure that doesn't cause a problem. These are different white violets. This was sold to me as Viola blanda, sweet white violet, which I think was a misidentification with the way that it grows out on these spreading stolons, and it tends to get actually very tall for a violet. I think this was Canadian violet, and it's got these neat little striations down inside the flowers, which is kind of cool. But proving to be a nice spreading ground cover here, which I like, so I might take and move some of that elsewhere too, to see how it does. Over here we've got ostrich ferns. These are notoriously aggressive spreaders, but supposedly less so in drier soil. So I gave them a shot up in this front area of the house to see how they would do. I put 1 or 2 plants in here. I've got some sprouting up in a couple of different places, and I think it would be really cool if this front bed were all like all these ferns. I think it's very pretty. And they get these neat little dry, they're not seed heads because ferns spread by spores, not seeds, but these called fertile fronds are an interesting sort of like little architectural, structural, visual interest that happens with these guys, because the foliage will die back completely in the fall and just become all this dead stuff, which doesn't look that attractive. But again, part of native plant gardening is letting the dead things stay, because it all serves a purpose and it's putting nutrients back into the soil, all that good stuff. So we already talked about the wood poppies and the fringed loosestrife. There's one non-native lungwort in here. Again, a guy that was put in here many years ago and has just been left to stay. Here's more threadleaf coreopsis. So this will get some nice yellow blooms in a bit. These dead seed heads are a different type of penstemon. This one is, I forget what the most often used common name for this one is. But he was also an experiment to see if he would survive here. He did. So I'll probably spread more seed of him around. Some other non-native lilies that were here with the house. This fuzzy guy is here and also there. This is rose campion, another non-native, but it just sort of showed up, and it doesn't seem like it's it spreads a lot by seed, but it's very easy to pull up. So I let it hang out here because I don't have anything better for these spots right now. These will get about 2 feet tall with some pretty pink and white flowers on them, and the foliage is just sort of this nice silvery fuzzy color, sort of like lamb's ears, if you're familiar with those. So it's a nice contrast to some of the other things that are happening here. so I let it hang out. I've also got spiderwort here, the tall stalks that are back in there, these guys. They look very similar to the lilies, but these are a native species. I believe this one is Ohio spiderwort and this one is Virginia spiderwort. They're kind of difficult to tell apart, but they'll get some really cool flowers in maybe another month or so after they grow a little bit more. And I can show you what those look like when they come out. The bees really love them, bumblebees particularly. Over here this is another of the blue false indigo, Baptisia. This was the first one I got that I planted and just thought it was absolutely stunning, so I wanted more of it. So hopefully more will end up over there. It's starting to rain a little bit more, but you know, it's okay. Here is yarrow. Depending on who you ask, yarrow may or may not be native. It seems like one of those plants that just does really well wherever it is. So depending on your definition of native, whether that means pre-colonialism here in North America, or like, you know, talking back to like Ice Age era, yarrow shows up all over the world, or at least in multiple continents. And so I'm choosing to just go with it. I think it's got this really cool feathery foliage. This one was just a little plant last year and did really well and is spreading a lot more. So hopefully there will be more of that in the coming years. Here's some more moss phlox. Most of these aren't in full bloom yet. They're getting there, these ones. This is a different cultivar than most of what else is in this bed, with larger pink flowers on it. And eventually there will be more cone flowers here. These are going to be black-eyed Susans that show up here, and there'll hopefully be some butterfly weed that comes back. This is one of my favorites, actually. One of the only like bright orange native flowers that is, as a milkweed, it tends to be used by monarch butterflies, which need all the help they can get. So I try to plant as much of that as I can. I also have, these are a different type of aster. These are aromatic aster that have done really well here. They get to be about 18 inches and won't bloom until like October into November. So a really great late season flowering plant for pollinators before they are bedding down for the winter. And then most of the rest of this bed is all of this moss phlox. A bunch of it has died back and I need to cut it out, but for the most part it spreads really nicely, so I have no concerns that what remains will take over the dead spots pretty quickly. Okay, that's the front of the house. It's continuing to rain, but we are pressing on. Over here, this is a new little tree I just planted. I actually bought it last year and it overwintered in a pot. But this is a white fringe tree, so it's a late bloomer in the spring. It's working its way on coming out with leaves later than most others, but I'm hoping this will get big and gorgeous as the years progress. I just laid out some new cardboard to smother the grass here along the edge of the house to create a new little bed. I might extend the bed out to sort of engulf this tree area, but I've got a different coneflower here, Rudbeckia lanceolata, I think, gets yellow flowers. Over here there's more spiderwort, and this is a red twig dogwood, which is native to here and will get white flowers soon, but it has these lovely red branches that a lot of people use for like Christmas decor and things. So I've got a couple of these. They propagate really easily. I tend to just cut when I trim the branches and prune it back. I just take the cut branches and jam them in the ground, and they grow and into an entirely new plant, which there are more of over there. Got some golden Alexander here, which is a host plant for the pipetail, or the spice bush. No, it's one of the swallowtail butterflies. It's caterpillars eat this. They also eat parsley. Parsley is not native. This one is. This is sort of a holding bed for other things until I figure out where to put them. There's some more hostas in here that I got from a garden swap. Just sort of hanging on to them because why not? Some more spider warble grow here. This is blue-eyed grass, which looks an awful lot like regular grass, but it's actually in the iris family. And it'll get some lovely, cute little, like indigo blue flowers in a little bit. I feel like I also have, there is a native iris hiding back here, a blue flag iris that I don't know if it'll bloom. It's sort of getting crowded out by these dogwood, but we'll see how it does. All right, I'm running low on battery, so let's get through the last bit of this here. So this is the front slope bed that is full of a lot more of the moss phlox, all sorts of different colors. I just bought as many different colors as I could find the other last season and threw them all in here. And I love when they just sort of like meet and mound together and they end up making this lovely patchwork as they grow more. Along the front, I have Callirrhoe, which will vine out. You can see all the dead vines here. We'll grow these long stalks out with these beautiful magenta cup-shaped flowers. Also very popular with the bumblebees. We've got a really big violet that just I left here when I mulched this area, and it's doing awesome. We've got a couple different bee balms up in here. Some cone flowers. Still trying to see what likes it in this spot. This is one of the newest beds. This here is a native rose. I believe this is a Carolina rose, maybe. It doesn't get as like big showy flowers like most roses that people think of, but it does get cute little pink little single flower petals, which is very nice. What else is here? Am I stepping on anything? I feel like I planted some things in here late last fall and I don't know who's here. Oh, there was supposed to be another Baptisia that didn't make it. That's okay. Let's see, more cone flowers along here, and all of these violets that I just sort of let stay when I smothered the area from grass. This is another penstemon, so that'll get a little bit taller. This is another sort of questionable, everybody has different opinions on the nativity of Prunella vulgaris, and because there's a European version and a North American version, but they're so close to each other that most people can't tell them apart. So, you know, maybe if we can't, the insects can't either, but supposedly this is the more Native American version, so hoping that spreads more. And here's where we start to get into shrubs. This is a blueberry. Blueberries are native here. And this is a high bush blueberry as opposed to the low bush blueberry of the two native blueberry species. So this one will get tall if nobody keeps chomping him down. And maybe I'll get some berries out of it, but maybe the birds will get to it sooner than I will. Pretty often, that'll happen. This is a red twig dogwood that I planted from a stick like 18 months ago. It's doing awesome. Here we have, this is Golden Alexander, also a notorious spreader and ground cover. It keeps, stays evergreen over the winter, which is nice. And I'm really trying to get a bunch of it established along this fence line to sort of keep the grass from the other side of the neighbor's fence out of the bed. This is a serviceberry, which is a lovely native tree that already finished its little white blooms very early in the season. There are 4 of them along here. and they will get some lovely sort of blue, black, purple kind of berries that the birds tend to love if cedar apple rust doesn't get to it first. There's a fungal infection that tends to pass back and forth between trees in the apple family like this and trees in the juniper family like cedars, and it gets sort of unsightly, but it doesn't really hurt the plants when it happens. This is a cultivar of a 9-bark shrub, very arching, elegant, and it should get a lot bigger. Here's more of those red twig doglets. They just did great. This is a black chokeberry, I think, Aronia species that supposedly does well literally anywhere, and so it's doing well here. It's got some blooms. It might get some berries if those develop nicely later. Sort of cherry-like is what that ends up being. There's another serviceberry tree. This guy didn't make it. I forget what he is, but I'll have to take him out. Is this one a spice bush? No, this is a spice bush. I have to remind myself of what these other things are, but the idea is this whole section will end up being a native hedge of all these different sorts of shrubs that hopefully will grow a bit more and give a little bit of privacy from the neighbor's lawn. I'm very excited actually in here. A couple things came back that I didn't think were going to. I think this is a giant bellwort, which is not usually available commercially, but it's a woodland wildflower species that I was excited to see available from one of my favorite garden places. So I picked one up to see how it'll do. It should get a tall, like arching and then like bell-shaped yellow flower on it. And then over here we have mayapple, which are so cute. These little like umbrella guys. Also a woodland species. And this, hello. And this is a native geranium. So trying to see how those guys do here. And then I've got a native pachysandra, which is, I wasn't sure if it was going to show up again, but it's working its way back. This may be a slow spreader, but it eventually could become a nice ground cover. And that guy also didn't make it either, but oh well. That's most of everything. The only other stuff over here by the shed is I have some Virginia bluebells that have not bloomed yet this season. I don't know if they're going to. They're usually one of the earliest spring plants, but we'll see. At least they keep coming back, so that's helpful. I threw some of that fringed loose strife over here to see if it would take in this shady spot in front of the shed, and it seems like it's doing so. So that's great. And that's about it as far as all the different, the last thing over here, in this little corner bed, also a newer thing. We've got some Canada anemone here, Canadian anemone, which is also a notorious spreader, but I will be happy about that here, and a native honeysuckle. There's a lot of Japanese and Asian honeysuckles that are incredibly invasive here, but this is a native honeysuckle vine, and this will get some lovely red tubular flowers that are supposedly very popular with hummingbirds. So I'm excited to let this guy climb this old dilapidated light pole that doesn't actually work, and let it use it as a trellis. So that is about it for the gardens. There's my little mower. He does a great job. He's still getting going for the season. The grass is a little bit long yet, but he'll trim it back soon. So that's it. That's my little garden tour. Hope you enjoyed.